Hey everybody, this is On and I'm coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video. I will have to get my glasses on here and I'm sorry about the reflection that can cause on the screen with the computer, but I really want to take a look this month. I started out, I started out this month thinking maybe I would do something that would be more health-based, that would help people out to know, where to keep their focus health-wise as we continue to move through things in our world, as we know that there's more things that are coming that are going to be released along the way, and to just kind of stay on top of it for what your body needs to move through um, these things that are playing out in our world, to be ahead of any of the viruses and things that might come out along the way. So that's where I started, because I had actually looked at some of the code connections in regards to particularly, let me see what I had, to endocrine disruptors from mRNA. And, of course, we all know that that's a big thing right now. We all know how the mRNA is working and, shifts and adjusts things and changes things. And a lot of us are up on that. If you're not, you can do some research on that. But at the same time, with the mRNA aspects, one of the things that we know is it's a big endocrine disruptor, and that's originally the direction I was going to go. But I was actually working on some stuff personally recently, and because those of you that know me, I'm finally back in Maine after traveling for the last 5 months, basically, and I've been looking around at a place to live, and something hit me the other day, and I said, I wonder, I do that. I wonder where the biolabs are, because something hit me about the biolabs the other day. And I thought, I wonder where these places are around the state that I'm in, because I knew there's some research labs out on the coastal region. I know there's some things connected to the Rockefellers out there. And so I thought, well, let me take a look and see what I can find. Well, very easily and actually very quickly, what I came up with was a whole bunch of biotech companies. And one of the places I was actually considering, should I move there or not move there for the winter season, because, it's kind of a beautiful location. And it's very interesting. They, will set a lot of these companies up actually in the cities, but close to some of these bigger rural areas. And they will, put these out there. So I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, I wonder what's around. Well, one of the places I was looking at is actually right in the center of a circle of biolab companies. So go figure that. I mean, really go, what are the chances of that? Of course, there's a whole bunch further south. This is not as big as some of the other areas further south, down into the Portland area or things like that. But it got me thinking about some things that maybe even more than just talking about the codes around endocrine disruptors and what all that involves. And actually Epic Times put out a great article about the whole endocrine disruptor factors and all of that you could go there and look that up, and it will give you all kinds of information of all the body systems that are disrupted in this process and that are being affected through this mRNA technology. But then I got to thinking, what might be really valuable for people is to take a look and to have you go in and actually do a search, put in for your area, and you could just do it, Google or whatever your browser window is that you use, put in biotech employers in, and then whatever state you're in or country or area or region that you're in. So like I put in biotech employers in Maine, for example. And when I did that, that had a link and it brought up all of these companies. So basically it told me all of the main companies that are in Maine that are connected to the biotech industry, that have biotech labs, that have educational institutions that are biotech related, and kind of gives me an area of what they're working on, what they're doing, what they're up to. And I started thinking how important this is for us to know. It's actually quite important for us to realize where these companies are around us. Where are they in your region, in your area? And how much information can they give us? Because as we know, the corrupt elite, whenever they put something forward, they have to tell us about it somehow. Well, if you don't stop to think, and should I go to their website? If I don't go look at their website, you don't know what they're telling you that they're doing. And when you get into some of these cults, some of the more satanic groups, I'm not saying all of them, but these practices that the elite corruption are involved in, their philosophy, and I'm not saying this is right or correct, but their way of thinking, because many people ask me, well, what is it with this whole thing of disclosure, of telling you what they're going to do? Well, their whole philosophy and way of thinking comes down to, in a nutshell, if they tell you we are working on this, that's pretty much the same as telling you this is, if we're working on this disease, if we're working on research for this, that's pretty much what we're getting ready to release or do something with. Therefore, we have disclosed to you what we are up to. And if you choose to participate in it, believe it, fall into fear over it, all of these things, then that is your doing. Therefore, we are relieved of the karmic aspects and responsibility for what happens to you. That is their train of thought. Now, of course, we know in the bigger scheme of things that's not true. You never get out of being accountable for your actions. If you release a disease in the world and that goes and kills a bunch of people, you're still responsible for that, even if you've told people that you're releasing it. So this is the interesting piece in all of this. But when we get down to it, I encourage you to go in and plug in that search information. Now, when I did that and I came back up with things, what I found was I got a whole list of the organizations, the companies, what city that they are in, their areas of expertise, and a short description of where they are. And they listed them alphabetically by the company. In this case, and the one that I found. And again, it tells me all these areas, so I could actually go in and plug in those cities and look at the grid, look at, wow, where are these places and what are they up to? And this is important. One of the companies, of course, that came up on this was Alere, or also known as Abbott. Now, some of you may be sitting there going, Abbott, what is Abbott connected to? It seems like I've heard that. Well, when they were looking at pushing out the vaccines when Trump was in presidency, Abbott was one of the main companies that was up there. And why Abbott? Why that particular company when there's all these big companies across, and a lot of people weren't so familiar with them? Well, one of the things is that Alere, also known as Abbott, is a world leader in rapid diagnostics. So when you consider that, they're not just a local little tiny company putting some products out, they are a world leader. So they actually have these world connections, and so that's where you start to come into some of these companies that are, globally connected. They're not just, a little thing. And they like to make you think everything sounds so good on their website and that they're doing this good work. But when you come down to it, a lot of this is about money. It's about selling products. It's about going in and doing it. Now, oftentimes we wonder, well, how can we get ahead of the corruption? How can we get ahead of the game? Well, you can get ahead of the game by going in and finding out who these companies are in your area. And then when you click on the company, it will give you an opportunity to go into their website. And you can then go into their website and you can do your own research to find out, who's behind that company, who's supporting it, who's doing what are they working on, and the research areas that they're working on, the types of diagnostics that they have products for, these different types of things. That is going to tell you basically what is active in motion, what is getting ready to be released in motion. And then you can take that information and you can start to do, again, some research on it, look it up and say, well, what does this thing do? Because as we know, and we learned this with, the whole C19 stuff, is that, that was active and going and known long before it ever showed up in 2020. So, we can learn what they're up to before they're actually up to it. And these areas of focus are really telling us what they're doing, what they're working on, what they're going to put out into the world. And again, so much of this, they present it like, oh, look, we're doing this research so that we can help the environment. Oh, look, we're doing this research so that we can, better people's health. No, they're not. They're doing it because they want control. They want control over the environment, control over animals, control over people. And that's why they're going into this area. And what I found is actually several other companies, not just Abbott, are working on this RNA, DNA types of stuff. Matter of fact, most of the companies are. So when you start to see these overlaps and what the companies are doing, you know what the bigger world focuses are on that. So as I start to click, of course, on Abbott, one of them, and let me get over into this area, on their website, they're focused on products and solutions. And, when you're looking at things, they're considering a world leader in rapid diagnostics at the point of care with a focus on cardio, metabolic disease, infectious disease, and toxicology. Well, isn't that interesting that with the whole C19 stuff that's going on, that it is connected to cardio and it's connected to metabolic issues, which is the endocrine system in the body. The endocrine system has a lot of metabolic hormonal things that it regulates in the body. So this is a very, very important piece to consider. And then, of course, the infectious diseases and toxicology. So, what we find from them is like, you go into their website and you start to look at things and it's like, okay, great. So now they have all these products for testing things, grids, you can check for this. There's kits, for home testing. There's all of these things. This isn't about helping your health. This is about selling products. And when you go into the products and the solutions, they actually have it broken down by what? Cardiovascular, chemistry, electrolytes and metabolites, clinical platforms and diagnosis, coagulation. Here again, we're finding that in the coming up a lot in our world. Infectious disease, oncology, toxicology, traumatic brain injury. Well, isn't that interesting? So, I mean, and that's plasma connected. It kind of goes on and on. And so, a lot of this stuff is this is just about selling products. This isn't, they package it in a way that is, different than that, like how great it is that we can diagnose this, how great it is that you can do this at home. We know that there's problems in the test. We understand that in there. So, really looking at that, you can even go on to like a website like Abbott, for example, and they're not even, they're called Global Point of Care.Abbott. That's part of what I'm in, and you can go into, for example, careers and look at what jobs they're offering. This is another way that you can get in there. Well, what are they offering? Business support, customer and technical support, information technology, marketing, operations, sales. So you can see where their emphasis is. Information technology, isn't that interesting when you're connecting it to jabs and things like that? Marketing, of course, we've got to be able to market this. How do we market this? How do we push the sales? this sorts of things. So if you go into information technology on their job area, what are you going to find? You know, cybersecurity. Now, you know, on one hand, you can say, oh, well, they're trying to protect this or that. Well, if you're basically just selling products, cybersecurity, you know, doesn't necessarily have to do it unless your products are involving something more than that. Application security analyst, systems administrator, system analyst, more system analyst, technical architect, which is connected to the sales force, project managers with finance, senior IT specialist, which is connected to e-commerce development. So when you start to look at these things, and they actually have like 10 pages of tech jobs. So here again, you have to kind of wonder, but this is just one of the many ways that you can go in and explore, you know, explore some of these things. Going in and looking at who are the investors in these companies, you know, really who's behind it. And you can go in and you can look at some of it, you know, look, part of what they even present in this area is helping drive the health tech boom. You know, what health tech, you know, health is not technology, you know, unless you're a robot, unless you've got computer chips in you. Health is not technology. So to make that connection, that right away tells us that, you know, they are making certain shifts that are moving us away from natural biology, natural aspects of the human body into these tech connections in there. And so, you know, again, you can get in for that. You can look at their stock reports. These are all, there's so much wealth of information on these websites when you just start digging around a little bit in them. Now, there's another company here in Maine called BioRad. And when I started to look into BioRad, what did I find? They have all kinds of, going into BioRad, their business areas are assays, instrumentation, reagents, education, COVID-19, and EUA. So they do research and diagnostic products. It partners with Bio6 on a test for COV-2, EUA for a digital PCR molecular diagnostic test, and the viruses that causes, I'm seeing if I can get to the rest of it, that causes that. So, I mean, again, you kind of getting into this. When you get onto their website, you'll find all kinds of things. They, one of the things they deal with, not only, I think they were one of the ones that they have some courses and things like that, and they deal in aspects of cloning. So they have a whole thing on that. That's another thing, you know, don't just write something off because it looks like an educational facility. The courses that they are teaching at the educational centers at these educational areas is, and that's primarily what they're listed, that's one of the areas that they're listed with, is education. And so when you get in and you start to look at that and you see that they're putting a focus on cloning, well, why do we need to be cloning? We don't need to be cloning unless you're, you know, getting ready to use clones to do your dirty work, so to say. So there's a huge thing on that. And what I found interesting on the cloning courses when I was looking at it is they're not even created by experts. They're not created by people who actually have huge knowledge bases. They're created by undergraduate students and community college teachers. Now, there's a huge difference in your knowledge base between the community college level and, say, a university or grad level educator. So basically what they're saying is, hey, let's let a bunch of students play around with things, see what they come up with, and we'll let them create this thing. So it's not created by experts, which tells you when it's not created by true experts in the industry and a collaboration of different peers coming from different points of view, then that's really coming down to a narrative. I mean, that's like, now you start to get into some of the brainwash areas. That's where you start to get into the aspects of, we're going to create a program for you to learn what we want you to learn type of thing. But the other thing that BioRad deals in here, for example, is surveillance. And they get into this whole thing about with the emergence of, it says right here, with the emergence of SARS-CoV-2 variants that may confer an evolutionary advantage to the virus. The need for fast, sensitive, and reliable tests to monitor for variants is essential both for tracking purposes and sequencing prioritization. What does that remind you with? What does tracking purposes and sequencing prioritization connect with? That connects with social credit scores. That means this isn't about tracking the disease. This is about tracking you. This is about tracking everybody who has had the jab, everybody who's got that microchip or that technology inside of them. It is about saying sequencing prioritization. They want you to believe that that has to do with, how your DNA and things like that are being sequenced and what is a priority and what isn't in the body with different shifts and changes. No, that's about social credit system. That's about whether you have priority over somebody else to enter a space, to get on public transportation, to enter your own home. We're already seeing this in China. This is what has already been implemented. They're pre-designed mutation detection assays. Okay, nature doesn't necessarily mutate. So they're already telling you here that with the CoV-2 variant, that there are mutations that are happening and they are tracking those mutations. So if you've gotten these tests, if you've gotten this path, if you've gone down the jab route, they are monitoring how your DNA, how your RNA, how these aspects of your genes are being modified and mutating. Okay, this is flat out there. This is right on their website. They're not hiding any of this information. So it's to support the detection of a specific mutation in the FAM channel and wild type sequence. So they're, here again, they're using these tests. They're selling products. They're selling courses. This is about pushing what they want people to know and what they want people to promote in the world as they learn these things. So, here again, you get down to these aspects, and then of course they have all these tools and kits to do. And then it's like, oh, if you're going to learn this course, we're going to sell you into this course. And then that course is going to require you to have these kits, and that's going to require you to do this. And you've got to think about this. How many innocent kids out there go into a course like this, and then they say, oh, mom, or oh, dad, or oh, sister, or brother, or whoever, or best friend, let me run this test on you. This is just another way that they are pushing these infections and things through the body, because we already know that a lot of these tests are carrying the virus itself. So, not to mention the different inadequacies. So here again, we've got another thing. And then at the bottom of this page, they talk about more COVID-19 surveillance solutions. And they talk about the surveillance is needed to better inform public health decisions. Obstacles to surveillance work include large sample numbers, supply shortages, and complex sample types. Bio-Rad offers a range of solutions for COVID-19 surveillance. Okay, again, we're using surveillance. We're not using monitoring. We're not using checks. We're not using that. It's surveillance. Okay. We got to get this through our heads. We may not like what this is telling us, but it is flat out telling us what is going on here. They are doing surveillance. This is not about people's health whatsoever. Then I had one other one that I pulled up, and I'm not going to go through everything, but it's definitely worth just highlighting a couple of these so you guys can get an idea. Another one that's centered on education is Colby College. That's another one here in Maine. It is, let me click on this. It's a private liberal arts college in Waterville, Maine. Approximately 1,800 students from more than 60 countries are enrolled annually. Well, on their website, I think it says 70 countries. So that includes it. So that tells me they have people from, all over the world. This isn't just like, hey, a lot of foreign students want to study here. That means, hey, we're bringing in a lot of people. Anytime I see that type of a thing, it tells me there's a lot of corruption going on, because it is connected to bringing people over to do their things. This is, they can blackmail them with their education and various other things doing it. It says that it offers 54 fields of study and 30 minors in here. So when you go into their website, it's very interesting because they have a couple of things that say recent headlines. One of those recent headlines, Maine media cover, 7 million gift to local students attending Colby. Who's gifting that money? Well, when I clicked on it, it went to a page that didn't really say anything. It was a page that basically doesn't exist anymore. Same was true with the other aspects. Colby professors receive $100,000, no strings attached, reports Inside Higher Ed. But then it gives you a link to go to their new news page, which actually doesn't talk about these things. So, it's kind of like, okay, who's funding this? Well, when I delved a little bit, and I didn't get all the way into all of the history, obviously that'd take a huge amount of time to go through everything. But when I just clicked on the initial things, heard a first few minutes of, the video that they have about the origination of when it started. It said it was chartered in 1813. This is a private college, by the way. It's an independent liberal arts college. It is considered the 12th oldest in the nation, in the US here. And they talk about it pioneering several important initiatives. Well, when you first come onto their webpage, it's like, oh, look at this great humanitarian stuff that we're doing. We're out feeding the homeless, and we're doing things to take care of the environment. And here again, here's all of that fluff that the corruption uses in their stuff. And then you get into the history of it, and it's got every corrupt talking point on there. They want you to believe that it was the first collegiate anti-slavery society, the first previously all-male New England college to admit women, participated in the first intercollegiate women's varsity ice hockey game, the first college to issue email accounts to all students. I'm really not buying this. And as you go on in there, it says, and in April 2013, Colby became one of only 4 colleges or university in the country and the first among our peers to achieve carbon neutrality. Okay, so, when you start to talk about these things, it's like, man, they're on every agenda. They're highlighting every agenda, this virtue signaling that's going on their website. But as you start to get into it and you find out who started this college, it wasn't even a private individual. It was the government. So this college was started to be able to, even way back then, when you look at it, 1833, 1813, okay, when they started, 1813 is when they started. So when you go back on that, we're talking 207 years, 209 years ago that this started. This is showing they were already setting the foundations that we are going to infiltrate the educational institutions. And we're not just going to infiltrate them, we're going to start our own so that we can program people in this direction in there. So these are the things that I'm saying. Go in and take a look and know what's around you. Start with the biotech companies. And why is that important? Because it's the biotech companies who are going to tell us what they're doing to our environment, what water sources that they're working on, what animal life that they are testing things on, what diseases they're getting ready to release. Because if they're doing the research on them, if they're putting a focus on that in their programs, that is exactly what they're getting ready to release. That is exactly what they're going to bring out into the world. So these are the things that you really want to take a serious look at and know what's happening in your area. And I can assure you that where are these things going to break out? They are going to break out where these labs are. So when I think back to when Trump was highlighting Abbott, was he really highlighting the vaxes so much? Was he really highlighting the shots, the jabs, that stuff so much? Or was he highlighting the role and the importance of the biolabs? And I think he was really trying to bring to our attention this aspect of what is going on in the biolabs. Pay attention to what they are doing. So I think this is a really kind of big thing that's going on, because where these biolabs are located, that's where you're going to see higher incidences of things happening. You have a couple of different things. You have the programming that goes on there. They're oftentimes connected to cities who are connected to supporting the dictatorial structures, the socialist structures, these radical structures of rulership, these agendas in there. And then they're also releasing things in those areas. They're using those areas that they are in as test areas. So to me, I looked at it energetically. And I said, well, that's why I'm not so drawn to the coastal part of Maine, and I'm drawn to the western part of Maine. Because the western part of Maine doesn't have it. The western part of Maine has other connections to corruption that are more the financial based. Not only that, this Colby Institute, the other thing that I found out with them is that they were involved, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm sorry, I don't have the page up on it, but they were actually involved in, well, actually, I might be able to find it here really quick. Let me see if we can get it, because I think it was in this Colby News area. As they talk about various things. Yeah. They actually have Colby delegation attending the COP27, or the UN Climate Conference. So here again, you see these private institutions, sometimes these things, they build them all up to be, oh, look, this is so great. Look at these things that we can study. And why would this college, you have to ask these questions. Why would these colleges, why would this college, this private institution, be attending the UN Climate Conference? What is their connection to that? Why, that's supposed to be for more government things. But again, when you delve into it and you realize, oh, they were created basically by the government to start with, well, that makes a lot more sense of, why they're promoting these different things. So I'm encouraging to get out there, because once you start to unfold it, again, what you want to do is you want to take, well, what are they studying? If they're studying cloning, what are they doing? Okay, if we're going to be cloning, then you want to plug into your search engine, okay, what are the impacts of cloning? How is that going to affect us on a health wise? How is that going to interfere with our genes? What are the diseases that might come up, or the systems that will be impacted in our body for that, such as the endocrine system being affected by the mRNA technology? So, when you start to get into that, and it's, again, you can go in and say, oh, okay, the endocrine system is going to be messed up. So again, you can go to that article in Epoch Times and take a look and see all the systems and things that are connected to it. And then it's like, okay, here's the systems I need to support, and here's the nutrition, here's the food sources that will support that. And then you've got your solutions of staying ahead of the game. That's how you're going to stay ahead of the game. That's how you're going to get on there with what's going down, and how to protect yourself as they're rolling out these different agendas, as they're rolling out these different things in the world. So I know I'm kind of excited about this and kind of freaked out by it at the same time. I'm just going to be upfront about that, because on one hand, I'm not sure I want to know what they're up to. On the other hand, I definitely want to know. And so when we get into these things from, again, a code perspective, we can really start to break it down. And I'm open to it to look at the different pieces that are connected from a code perspective. So even if you leave that in the comments and you say, hey, I went in and I looked up, this company, and they're focusing on cloning. Let's just take cloning, for example, right? And let's take a look on a code perspective, what that is about. And that is going to be about, okay, so cloning is designed to interfere with our natural aspects of abundance. Cloning is actually, much like some of the other things connected with the jabs, is connected to removing our sense of being humane in there. So that's a huge thing. When we look at it energetically and we say, oh my gosh, this is about removing humanity. This is about removing the care for one another. And what does that generate in things? When you remove this aspect about whether you're caring for people or not, and you remove this aspect of true abundance, when you remove the aspect of wanting to put effort in to create a result or to accomplish something, you are now basically creating cattle, in a sense. You're just creating people who are basically working like a psychopathic tendency, because they have no sense of emotion, no sense of feeling, no sense of caring. They have no desire to put any effort in, which means they can just be on the system. And why would they want to emphasize that? Because they want total control. When they take total control over everything, then people just give in. If people are not wanting to put effort in, if they become lazy, if they don't have this humanitarian aspect, they become great tools to use, whether that is tools to start riots, to start violence, because the psychopathic doesn't care about that, whether it is tools to to just live on the system, where they can totally control them. They'll do whatever they want. And again, they don't care. So these are the things that we have to do. So if you want a little perspective about what you find in your area, drop it in the comments to this video, and I will put in, just a few highlights of what that is connected to in our code energy. So these are why we want to step up on these things. This is why we want to call these things out. This is why we want to pay attention, because this is just going to add to the illusions. So if they're working on these cloning things, which they've been working on for quite some time, and then they start releasing clones in the world, and this is part of why they're putting all these tests out. Why? This is why they put such a huge push in the test to get your DNA tested, because they can use that for cloning. They want you to submit those things thinking, oh, look, I'm going to find out my genealogy, which in most of those areas are only about 50% accurate, if that. And they're proving they're way off. They're telling people that they're connected to people that they're not connected to. And it's really not about that. It's just a way to get people to give them their DNA, is what it is. And then they take that DNA and they use it in these research institutions and through these studies. And so people don't even know that's what's happening most of the time. So we need to really be careful when we see these fads come out, when we see these things coming up, and they're asking for things, they're asking for you to submit tests for things, just say no. Just say no is what I can say. Don't buy into it. Don't give these things out. It might seem fun, it might seem exciting, but there, I can guarantee you there's something bigger behind it in there. And so that's where I'm at this month. That's where I'm going. Have fun going down some rabbit holes with all of that. And like I said, you know, if you see some of these things coming up, like, hey, I went through and I did this research, and in my area, this is what they're focusing on. Great, I'll be happy to like I said, share a couple of sentences with you and say, okay, that's connected to, you know, this this code pattern. And once we understand that, then we really want to relook at how we can do it. So like in the cloning pattern, I would want to say, okay, well, how can we boost true humanity in that area? How can we boost truly helping people in that area? How can we encourage people and excite them to put in the effort and create results and see what comes from that in there? So we have the ability to change the energy. We do have to take the steps to do it, but it's well worth it. And again, once you identify these things, then you have the power to make the shifts, and you have the power to make the changes. So don't get psyched out about what you see as you start to explore some of these things. Use it as a wealth of information so that you can get ahead of the game. You can work with foresight, which is what we do within the codes, is work with foresight. And then you can take a look at what you need to do to, again, boost your body's natural systems up to be protected in these things. And, you know, when you look at cloning and you look at that in combination, because as you know, these companies are all working with each other. It's not like they're isolated on their own. You know, you got a company doing the cloning research, and they're going to team up with the company doing the surveillance aspects and so on. And when you start to combine those things together, you know, what's going to happen? They're going to try to pretend that you did something that you didn't do, because actually it was your clone that did it. It wasn't you. But they're going to say, oh, look, it's your DNA. So yeah, that can be a little scary to think about. But again, this is why we have to stay on top of it, take care of ourselves, find out what we need to do for our body, what systems are going to be under attack, and get ahead of that game. You know, it's just like preventative care. When you know the cold season, the flu season's coming up, you got to boost your vitamin C. When you know allergy season's coming up, you've got to boost your local honey intake or things like that, so that you can handle it without having major issues. And this is no different. This is no different than that in there. And if there is this DNA RNA connection and you look at cloning, that means that if they share that that same gene structure that you share, even if it's been broken down into these other aspects that give it more psychopathic tendencies, you still have the ability to influence it through your actions, through your choices, through your life. So you are not powerless by any means, because what you are doing in your life is going to affect your clone and vice versa. So if you are holding in your soul self, you are going to shift what your clone can do if there is a clone out there of you. So you actually have that ability to make the shifts and to make the changes. Yes, it takes work. Yes, it takes practice. Yes, it takes awareness, all of these things, but you can do it. And, you know, here again, that's the power that the codes have, having those heads up. Now, if you want to get a heads up, I do have the 2023 edition out. It's been out for a while. It makes a great gift. You know, it's a great way to stay on top of what the energy currents are, what's going down. 2023 has a lot going down on it, and you want to be aware of what's going to happen. You want to be aware of what's coming down the pike, so that you can work with foresight, so that you can work with wisdom, so that you can work with understanding to stay ahead of the game. Okay, that's all I'm going to do for this video. I've kind of got it long enough, I think, and I will see you all in December. Take care, everyone.